There's a question that sounds simple but gets complicated fast. Why does the same product cost different prices for different people? Not a sale, not a loyalty point. The exact same item, the exact same moment, a different price depending on who's asking. That's no longer hypothetical. It's how a growing number of retailers operate, and it's happening in ways most customers can't see and most retailers haven't fully decided where they stand. Welcome to the IADS Retail Park. I'm your host, Maya, and today we're getting into one of the more contested topics in retail right now: algorithmic pricing, what it actually means, and what it means specifically for department stores. Joining me is Anchita, Head of Analysis and Perspectives here at IADS. Anchita, we are glad to have you with us today and to guide us through your exclusive.
Hi Maya, thanks for having me. This is a topic I've been curious about for a while because the language around it gets used very loosely. Dynamic pricing, algorithmic pricing, personalized pricing. People tend to use these interchangeably, but the exclusive argues that conflating them is actually where a lot of the confusion starts, including inside retail organizations themselves.
That's the first thing worth untangling, and it matters because retailers, media, and regulators all contribute to the mess. The exclusive lays out four distinct concepts. Algorithmic pricing is the broadest. It's when AI or machine learning recalibrates prices based on any combination of factors: demand, competitor data, seasonal patterns, supply costs. In principle, that's just the digitized version of what retailers have always done manually. Dynamic pricing is more specific. It's real-time price adjustment based on immediate signals like inventory levels or competitor pricing, and it applies to everyone equally. Airlines, hotels, and ride-hailing apps all run on this model. Amazon reportedly made over 2.5 million price changes per day as far back as 2013. Then there's differential pricing, charging different segments different prices, like student discounts or trade pricing. Those are market-facing distinctions, legally well understood. And then there's personalized pricing, also called surveillance pricing, which is the most contested, and the one that raises the real questions for department stores. So, Anchita, my first question to you would be, what makes personalized pricing fundamentally different from the others?
Well, the data it uses and what it's trying to do with it. Personalized pricing draws on individually identifiable data: browsing history, location, credit score, purchase history, even mouse movement patterns, to infer the maximum any individual customer is willing to pay and price accordingly. Forum law professor Zephyr Teachout describes it as using the same data infrastructure that social media uses to sequence feeds. Only here, the information doesn't determine what someone sees, but what they pay. The aim isn't a market price. It's your price, based on what the system estimates you'll tolerate. And the FTC's surveillance pricing study found that firms like McKinsey, MasterCard, and Accenture are tracking behaviors including mouse movements and items left in shopping carts, feeding that data into pricing models used by at least 250 retail clients from grocery to apparel.
That's a significant number of retailers operating that way. And when people think algorithmic pricing, they tend to picture e-commerce. But this is reaching into physical stores too?
It is, and that's one of the more interesting findings in the exclusive. The enabler in physical stores is electronic shelf labels, the digital price displays that remove the need to manually re-sticker shelves. They let prices change silently in real time across an entire store, and they leave no record a shopper can inspect of what an item cost an hour ago. On their own, they're a tool for price accuracy and compliance. But when combined with AI systems and consumer data pipelines, they become the infrastructure for dynamic and potentially personalized pricing in physical retail. The same shopper who gets targeted online can be reached in store through the same interlocking system, and the shopper's inability to observe any of this is engineered in, not incidental.
And loyalty programs are part of this picture too. They've traditionally felt like a straightforward exchange. You share your data, you get rewards. But that relationship seems to have shifted.
It has. And this is one of the more uncomfortable findings in the exclusive. Loyalty programs were the original socially accepted form of individualized pricing, a clear exchange. But in many cases, the program is now less a reward mechanism and more the primary data collection infrastructure that makes surveillance pricing possible. Once a retailer has enough behavioral data to recognize that a frequent customer's demand is inelastic, meaning they're going to buy regardless. The logic of personalized pricing suggests offering that customer fewer discounts, not more. The most loyal customers end up being charged the most because their loyalty looks like captive demand. There's reporting on Starbucks, whose loyalty data was found to have been shared with 64 third parties without customers' awareness. The program that felt like a reward had quietly become a data asset being used against the very people it was supposed to benefit.
So, given all of this, the data infrastructure, the physical store angle, the loyalty reversal, where does that leave department stores? Can they realistically compete with Amazon on pricing data?
The short answer from the exclusive is no, and the attempt is probably self-defeating. The data asymmetry between Amazon and any department store is structural and realistically unclosable. Amazon sees the full browsing and purchase graph of hundreds of millions of shoppers across every category, plus the sales data of third-party sellers competing on its own marketplace. Every transaction sharpens its next price. That sharper price wins the next transaction. And the lead compounds with every cycle. A department store entering the same contest starts with less data, learns more slowly, and has no realistic path to catching up. What makes it worse is that if a department store lists on Amazon's marketplace or builds on its cloud, it ends up feeding the same transaction and cost data into the engine it's trying to beat. The exclusive makes the point directly. Spending more on this only buys a place on a faster treadmill.
So, the alternative the exclusive is making the case for, is that about transparency?
Transparency and a clear commitment about direction. The argument is to use the same data infrastructure under a public commitment to move prices only downward. Never to extract the maximum a customer will pay, but to find what a customer deserves to pay less. Norway's Rima is the real-world example in the exclusive. The retailer uses dynamic pricing to make around 2,000 price changes a day, exclusively to lower prices. The exclusive argues that a department store that states openly what data it collects and commits that pricing intelligence will only ever move a customer's price downward turns a private intention into a public standard, something it can actually be held to. And the numbers support why this matters. Nearly 70% of consumers say they're very or extremely protective of their personal data. A 2025 Deloitte survey found that 56% of US consumers plan to use AI tools to compare prices and hunt deals. Price tracking apps like Camel, and Klarna's Price Runner are already making comparison a reflex for a growing share of shoppers. A customer who suspects they're being priced against doesn't stay loyal. They go transactional. And the extra margin taken from them now is lost the moment they disengage.
Where does regulation sit on all of this? Because there does seem to be real momentum building there.
There is, Maya. Thanks for bringing that up. It's moving faster than most retailers expected. New York's Algorithmic Pricing Disclosure Act came into force in November 2025. It requires disclosure when prices are set algorithmically using personal data. There's also a pending One Fair Price Act that would ban surveillance pricing outright, while preserving genuine loyalty programs and uniform discounts. And there are additional bills targeting electronic shelf labels and intraday price changes specifically. What's useful about the regulatory picture is that a department store that's already committed to transparency isn't scrambling to comply. It already meets the standard these laws are converging on. The crackdown looks like a threat to personalized pricing, but for a retailer that has made transparency its differentiator, it reinforces a position they've already taken.
So the case isn't just about ethics. It's also about where regulation is heading and where customer trust is heading all at once.
Those three things are converging, and the timing matters. Trust isn't recovered once it breaks. A customer who starts suspecting that prices are set based on what the system knows about them doesn't need proof. Suspicion alone is enough to change the relationship. Amazon is tolerated on convenience and price, not on candor about how its pricing works. The exclusive closes on this. Transparency is a bet on the segment that values being dealt with straight. Department stores are positioned to win that bet, not by outcompeting Amazon on data, but by being the retailers consumers still trust when every price is set by an algorithm.
For those tuning in, you can find the full exclusive on IADS, exclusive insights on Substack. The link is in the episode description. And the regulatory section and the REMA model are worth reading in full. Thanks for walking through this with me and Cheetah. This one's going to land differently for anyone running a loyalty program right now. There's a lot to sit with.
It was my pleasure, Maya, and thanks for having me on the show to go over this week's exclusive.
Thanks for listening to the IADS Retail Park, everyone. We'll catch you on the next episode. Please be advised. This podcast features AI cloned voices created with human oversight. All content is reviewed by experts for accuracy and relevance.